Hey guys, welcome back. And today's conversation is really not planned out at all. Partly because it's kind of a big conversation that I wanted to chat with you guys about, and I generally put a lot of time into kind of not planning out what I'm gonna say, but kind of finding my focus. And I'm not really sure I have a focus because I'm really more curious to find out what you guys think. And so because of that, I'm also kind of curious to see where this is going to wind up, because it's something that I've been passionate about for many, many years. And even in trying to sit down and plan it, it just seemed like it was too big. By the way, I think I sound a little different right now. I am sick again. I got sick last spring, and I feel like it's just been one thing after another. And I'm a very healthy person. I take good care of myself, but I don't know. I did not, for a period of time, it was actually kind of funny when I was thinking about coming back to YouTube. I actually got severe laryngitis, and I was like, okay, that's a sign right there. So anyway, so what I want to talk today about is medicine and healthcare. And the healthcare we receive, not necessarily like health insurance companies. That is a whole other conversation. But the money aspect of it aside, what I want to talk about is medicine and, like I said, and healthcare. And part of the reason this is something that is front and center for me, I think I've shared before, I've had type 1 diabetes now for more than 30 years. And so I'm very familiar with visiting doctors, getting lab work done. I swear, I've been doing it for more than 30 years. It is worse and worse whenever I go to the lab to get blood drawn. You would think I would be more used to it, and I wind up, I'm like almost on the brink of passing out now every time. And so I don't, and I haven't. But you would think by now I would be like a professional blood donor, which I'm actually not even allowed to be ever. I'm excluded from that group because I guess my blood is not that great, so as a diabetic. Anyway, so I'm very familiar with medicine. Going along with that, medicine is what keeps me alive. And so I value doctors, and I value the whole medical industry, because I know that there are other people, for example, and this is totally your choice, and might be becoming my choice as I get into this conversation. But it's totally your, some people never see a doctor because they don't like the medical field or the medical community. And again, that's a personal decision. And many of those people, by the way, who never go see a doctor, like live into their 90s or into their hundreds or whatever. And so I'm not even sure how much regularly visiting a doctor without reason even impacts our health. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But obviously for someone like me who relies on a hormone, insulin, and then all of the supplies and such that go along with that, and the doctor's care that goes along with that, medicine is important to me, and the field itself is important. And obviously I will go visit a doctor. Now, there are definitely times where I visit a doctor simply because I need my prescriptions, because there are definitely times when I feel like I know more of what's going on, especially when it comes to a condition like diabetes. But that being said, overall, if I had to check a box, do you support medicine or do you not? I support medicine. And as time has been going on, there have been a number of scenarios and situations which have caused me to question that. Someone who was such a firm believer and so grateful, because I mean, if you don't know a lot about diabetes or even type 1 diabetes and this whole idea of insulin, that's been around for less than 100 years. And without it, you die. So I am extremely grateful to be born during this time, because I would have been dead many, many, many years ago. And so, yes, I 100% and absolutely support medicine. And then, like I said, I've been challenged as of late. The last, handful of years has caused me to question the amount of faith that I have put in the medical industry. What this sheet of paper is right here is my prescription for my mammogram. I just turned 40 back in January. And so they were like, oh, happy birthday, here's a mammogram. Now, I've actually had mammograms before, about, I don't even know, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. And that's part of my story. So it's not even that I'm afraid of it, or I don't know what it is. Basically, they flatten your boobies out like a pancake, and you're supposed to smile and say that it doesn't hurt, and it's uncomfortable, and then it's over. But I've had this prescription in my bag since the very beginning of January, which was when my appointment was. It just so happened to coincide right around my birthday. And I still haven't made the appointment. And it's because I'm frustrated by this process. Now, for those of you who know someone who's suffering from breast cancer, or know someone who died of breast cancer, or if you personally have breast cancer, obviously this is a very compelling subject for you, and I don't want to take anything away from that. And very specifically, I don't even necessarily want to talk about mammograms and breast cancer prevention in and of itself, but it's kind of representative of where I want to go with this conversation. So I don't mean any disrespect or insult, or to reduce the intensity of anybody who's going through that sort of situation. But the reality is, and this is kind of where I wanted to open the door. The reality is breast cancer and colon cancer, for example, because we are also recommended as we get a little bit older to get colonoscopies. And let's say skin cancer, because we are recommended to go get our skin checked out, which I also do. Because I used to tan when I didn't actually tan. I tried to tan and darken my skin, and I would just burn, which is even worse. So I do get checked out for that. That being a high risk situation for me, because I had that sort of exposure, and it increased my likelihood of getting that cancer. But what I just talked about, for example, were 3 different kinds of cancer out of like how many? Hundreds? Thousands? Why have we decided to focus on, let's say, mammograms and colonoscopies and breast cancer and colon cancer? I understand that early detection is the best way to go, right? So why aren't we getting tested for the hundreds of other cancers? Do I have brain cancer? I don't know. You generally don't find out until the tumor is so large that you're starting to show signs and symptoms, in which case at that point, treatment might not be an ideal option for you at that point. Are we getting tested for bladder cancer? Are we getting sonograms to check out our bladder and our liver? My dad died of metastasized cancer, which they believe originated in his bladder. You don't hear people talking about routinely going for their annually scheduled bladder sonograms. I mean, not even saying that even sounds ridiculous. And so I'm wondering why we've decided to, one, freak us out over certain specific cancers. I want to know where the motivation for it comes from. Now, if you've got any minor compelling factor, your 6th cousin twice removed. I don't even know if that exists, but if someone down the line in your family had one of those cancers, absolutely get yourself on the list and go get that checked out. But that's not something that runs in my family. In fact, cancer itself doesn't really even run in my family. Endocrine autoimmune problems do, although I am the only one in my family right now that has type 1 diabetes. Many of the ladies in my family, on both sides of my family actually, have hypothyroidism or a slow thyroid, and many of us are on Synthroid. That is a trend. So without even any indication of it, hey, all the ladies, no matter, as you start to get older and grow up and stuff, get tested for that, because that seems to run in the family. And so I wonder just why we've decided to specifically select and freak everybody out about certain specific diagnoses. And it bothers me because, one, they freak me out. I don't ever like to get tested for something and then have to wait for results, even if I don't have like any compelling reason to think I'm about to get diagnosed with something that might be scary. But that freaks me out. It also, financially speaking, I'm wondering if that's our best use of I don't know, health finances, because the healthcare industry is so expensive. And I'm wondering how much all of this automated testing, I don't know, testing, see, even as I say it, testing seems like a very good idea, but I'm bothered by the fact that we are specifically focusing on only a select number of, even in this case, cancers. What about all the other things? How many other millions of diagnoses are there that we're not getting tested for? And who's decided? Who's the one who's making the decision that this is what's important? Part of my sensitivity to this mammogram right now is that, in a nutshell, I'm going to tell you my experience, because it turned into an unnecessary whirlwind. So I happen to have very lumpy boobies. I kind of always had, never really knew why, but I guess some people, you know, you just generally have denser tissue. Overnight, I woke up once, this was many years ago, literally overnight, I woke up with a swollen area. And I didn't really think anything of it because it came overnight. It showed up overnight. I thought it was, I don't even know what I thought it was. It wasn't even that significant. Anyway, I knew I had a gynecologist appointment coming up, and so I figured, okay, well, I'll deal with it then. But it was specifically uncharacteristic of breast cancer when you have a significant, it was almost like a softball or baseball that had kind of just shown up spontaneously, literally overnight. So I didn't really think anything of it, and I was gonna wait and just see what happens. I mean, you don't like cut yourself open when something, you know, happens immediately. So I go to the doctor and she feels me up and she decides, I don't like that, I want to send you for a mammogram. Well, immediately, now when the doctor classifies it in that regard as requiring a mammogram, and I was in my mid-30s at that point, I like freaked out. Anyway, I go for the mammogram, they freak out. They don't know what they're looking at. They send me for the sonogram. I go see is that a radiologist that looks at your sonogram? I think so. The radiologist semi-freaks out because he didn't know what he was looking at. So then they decide I need a biopsy. Now Gina's in full freak out mode. I don't know if you knew, I don't know if I've ever mentioned, whenever I get sick with a cold, I have a pretty strong fear that I'm going to die. And so the fact that, like, I could potentially be dying right now because I have this head cold, because I'm hoping that it's not something else, because I think the medical industry and medicine has kind of like freaked me out, because every time something you think is small winds up becoming something that's larger. So anyway, now I'm in full freak out mode. I go for the biopsy, and then you have to wait like whatever it was, like the week, 2 weeks before you find out. Worst 2 weeks of my life. It was easier getting diagnosed with diabetes than this 2 weeks of seemingly unimportant potential breast cancer that I was potentially facing. I finally get a call from the doctor and she says, you have what they call diabetic mastopathy, which, can I tell you, the gynecologist didn't know about, the radiologist didn't know about, and the sonogrammist, no, that's the same person. The mammogrammist, is that what they're called, did not know about. As a diabetic, for some reason, in our breast tissue, we develop scar tissue, which shows up as swollen lumps, which is probably why my boobies have been very lumpy for their entire life. Nobody knew about this. And P.S., I freaked out for a good month and a half for kind of no reason. Also, P.P.S., the biopsy, because of my autoimmune system, my biopsy completely interfered with my hormones and it messed up my cycle for a couple of months. I then had to go to my endocrinologist and say, I don't know what's going on, now my cycle's messed up. And he wanted to do a bunch of tests. And at that point, I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to breathe for just a minute. So like I said, I realized I just needed to breathe for a minute, because it couldn't be a coincidence that I had had a procedure and then I had had some other changes to my body, and it couldn't be that they weren't related, or at least I needed to give it some time. Because my endo at the time was thinking that I might have had like a tumor on my, what is this thing that's back here at the back of your head? Thyroid. couldn't think of what it was, thought I might have had a tumor there and wanted to send me for like an MRI for that. And I'm like, okay, I am done with all of the testing and all of the presumptuous or presumptions that something was already dramatically wrong when we weren't taking a chance to just stop and think about it. As it turns out, a couple months later, everything kind of returned to normal, and I never had any other problems with my cycle or anything else ever again. And so I feel like I was right at that time to question the recommendation of going for another test. Another example that I had experienced many, many years before, I have partial hearing loss in my right ear. So if you come up to me and try to whisper in my right ear, I won't hear it. For some reason, that tone of a whisper, I hear noise, but I can't understand what it is, and I can't talk on the phone in this ear. So if you come up to me and you start to talk to me here, I'll go like this. And I'll immediately give you my other side of the face, which almost looks like I'm turning to you to kiss you, which has almost happened a couple of times. But anyway, so I've got somewhat mild, but significant enough hearing loss in my ear. It originated in my early 20s when I had a very severe ear infection that basically scarred my eardrum just a little bit so it doesn't vibrate as much as most people. And so I lose some of the tones and some of the clarity in things that I'm hearing. So I flipped my head so much, my hair looks like it's taking off like wings. And so I had gotten it checked out with an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat doctor, just to make sure. Well, he proceeded to send me for an MRI because he thought I might have had a brain tumor or like an ear tumor or something. And I'm like, I mean, I went because I was freaked out enough. But now as I look at kind of the pattern, I mean, I had had an ear infection, so, which cleared up. So why were we assuming that I mean, I don't know, maybe he had a good reason, but now in retrospect, I'm kind of like, I feel like, again, that was just kind of like a jumping of the gun. I don't even know what that means, a jumping the gun. What does that even mean? Anyway, when you act too quickly, and so here I am now with this mammogram after, oh, no, I even have another example, which is probably why right now with the mammogram, I'm still holding on to the prescription. Over the summer, I told you, I started off by saying I've been sick since last year. Over last summer, I guess, I had a sinus infection, so they put me on an antibiotic. And there's an antibiotic and then like a partner to the antibiotic that you get within the same pill. It's called like Clavamate or something, like Clavix, or I don't know, something like that. But anyway, I didn't even look at what the prescription was. I had a sinus infection, and that's what people do. You take antibiotics when you have a sinus infection. Well, 2 months later, I go for my normal diabetes lab work, and my liver levels come back abnormal. And she recommends that I go see my primary doctor because she's concerned about my liver. Well, now I'm tremendously freaking out because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is this like, you know, signs of diabetes complications or something? What's going on? So I wind up doing research, and I come to learn that it has been known for the particular antibiotic that I took to temporarily elevate your liver levels. And in most people, they wind up going back to normal after, I think it was even within 6 months or something. Well, I had only taken them 2 months before. And so I made the decision at that time to wait for my next normal lab work, which was going to be in another 4 months. I was not running to go diagnose my liver because there was some compelling factors and some compelling information that would lead me to believe that it was going to go back to normal. And what, I mean, even if I went to the doctor, he or she would have looked at me, what would they do? Put me on medication? Put me on medication for my liver because I had one abnormal, mildly abnormal, by the way, it was very mild, but mildly abnormal elevated liver level. I mean, I feel like, I mean, is this normal? Does this happen to you? Does this happen to other people where, like, I don't even know what to say. I sound like a freak, actually. Between the dense and lumpy boobies and a potential tumor at the base of my neck, a tumor in my ear, and then elevated liver levels. my conflict is this. Going from someone who absolutely believed in the power of medicine, and I mean, I still do. But then here we are in a society where we're only selectively testing for certain cancers. Why stop there? Why not keep going and testing for all those other cancers? I don't even know what they are. We don't talk about them. I don't know. So if we've got skin cancer, colon cancer, and breast cancer, those, I don't even know, are those the top 3 cancers that people get? Well, what about number 4? What would number 4 even be? Why are we not getting tested for that? And then this whole idea of this immediate like rush to judgment. You've got an abnormal lab level or an abnormal situation. Quick, hurry up, go get you tested. I mean, I know we shouldn't necessarily wait and put it off. And I don't obviously support the perspective of people who don't, you know, go to the doctor at all. I mean, at least go like every 5 years or something. In fact, that's what a doctor said to my husband once. He's ridiculously healthy. And he says, what are we going to do? Check your cholesterol every year when you've got no indication that you've got anything wrong? He says, we'll spread it out every couple of years. And that seemed to be the most reasonable thing that I've heard a doctor say. And so I don't know what the answer is. And I don't know when I'm going to make my mammogram appointment. Of course, it has nothing to do with the fact that I had it before. Those results really wouldn't be indicative or not for right now. But do I really need one? They say, you know, you're supposed to get annual testing. We're talking about annual testing. Yes, because early detection is the key, like I said. But isn't early detection for any kind of cancer the key? So why have we made this separation of only select things that we should be looking at? I don't get it. And so I don't really even know what the right answer is. All I know is about a half an hour ago, I was going through my handbag and I found the prescription to go get the mammogram. And it immediately raised my blood pressure. P.S. Every time I go to a doctor's office, I have ridiculously high blood pressure. But at home, I am like an Olympic athlete when I check my blood pressure at home. So I'm just surprised that they haven't actually opened the conversation to make me go on some high blood pressure medication. But I feel like I've been played. You know, the guy who doesn't quite tell you the truth and is kind of stringing you along. This thing medicine that I had placed so much faith in. And when I would hear from people that they never visited a doctor or didn't ever want to take any medicine. And I'm like, well, screw you, because medicine is what's keeping me alive. Like, I would literally like get that resentful and that bitter about it. But now I kind of wonder, I'm like, where has the industry taken us? And how far are we supposed to go? When do we stop? We supposedly know ourselves better than anybody. And although doctors, I am not discrediting doctors in general, but you know, there's that whole other debate about lawsuits and stuff. And we are a very litigious society. So they, of course, would want to not only protect their patients, but then also cover themselves and say that they put in their due diligence. But now I just kind of feel like the whole thing has just ran away with itself. So at what point, I mean, obviously I've made correct decisions where I didn't follow up on my liver and I didn't look for the tumor at the base of my neck after the biopsy. You know, and those things worked out okay, but part of it was because of my own personal involvement and mindfulness. I was paying attention to myself and my body. And if things didn't improve or if I didn't have a follow-up lab, I would certainly, you know, have put some more effort in to make sure that I was taking care of myself. But kind of at the end of the day, you can never explain your whole life to a doctor in a nutshell. And you do wind up knowing yourself oftentimes better than the doctor ever could, since they only get like 15 minutes with you. And so then do we start making our own decisions despite the recommendations, which yes, of course we do, but do we take it so far that we then start ignoring what winds up being really good advice from a doctor? And then we wind up dying because we didn't listen to what the doctor had recommended because we had this whole level of potential mistrust or questioning of kind of the way things are. So I don't know. All I know is I'm still supposed to get this mammogram scheduled, which I haven't even, which is unlike me because I go see my endocrinologist every 4 months like I'm supposed to, like a good girl. And I see my eye doctor once a year and I do all this other stuff. And now this kind of preemptive testing for something that I don't even have any indication for or any family history for, it's just causing me to flinch. So where are you guys at? What do you guys think? Am I crazy? Should I just do what the doctors tell me? Do you always do what the doctors tell you? But at what point do we draw the line? Because I don't know as much as a doctor does. I didn't go to med school with good reason. I don't like blood and I can't listen to heartbeats. I would have made an amazing endocrinologist though, by the way. Not a chance. There is no way I could go through that training. So I don't know. Am I going so far the opposite? Am I running so far away from what is frustrating me that it's going to hurt me in the end is really, I guess, what I'm concerned about. And I'm frustrated that I was put in the position to now start doubting what I had 100% had some faith in for many, many years up until now. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you go to the doctor every year? Do you get tested for things? Are you annoyed that you have to get tested for so many things? Do you think we've crossed the line? Do you think it's going to set the medical industry up for a bad situation when we don't start listening to doctors? And even though we should, but is there a way out of it? Once you factor in, you know, like I said, the whole fact that we're a litigious society and doctors want to simply protect themselves, which you really can't blame them either, because how good work, that's awful grammar, and I'm like a grammar whore, so the fact that I can't get that sentence out is bothering me. A doctor cannot do good work if they're spending their time in court and they're sued to the point of being penniless because they didn't recommend a test that maybe really was necessary, but that they weren't sure about. Oh my gosh, it gets so complicated. And I feel bad because I keep giving you guys things that I don't really have the answers to. But I guess I just want to make you think. And I want you to help each other think. I really do hope, by the way, I really do hope that you are, for those of you who are taking the time to comment, a number of you are giving me paragraphs of the most awesome information. And so for those of you who watch this video, if you have a few minutes, take the time and read each other's comments, because you guys are saying some really amazing things and you're making me think. And even though I'm not necessarily commenting, it's probably because I want to comment too much. But you guys are definitely making me think too and add a tremendous amount of wealth to the conversation that I'm initially starting with. So if you get a chance, read each other's comments as well. So, because we should be more like a conversation and a little bit more like a community. On my old videos, I used to call us the G crew. Maybe we should be the G community. That does not sound nearly as slick as the G crew. But anyway, talk to each other, talk to me, and tell me what you think about something as valuable and as controversial as the medical industry. And on that very light note, I hope you have a fabulous rest of the day, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks.